Hello and welcome, fellow mind travelers, conscious beings of light encased in these instinctually driven flesh suits. Thank you for joining us on the Just a Thought podcast. I'm your host, Marcos Luna, and today we're going to be talking about, or I want to talk about, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Comment below if you're listening on YouTube, or email me on Anchor. However you want to get in touch with me, I've got my email there. But today we're going to be talking about the concept of Lila. It's an idea that I find very powerful. I believe it's found in the Hindu schools of thought, though I'm sure many people have stumbled upon this perspective of life in history. So Lila can be loosely translated from Sanskrit as divine play. As play or dance or game, something along those lines. I guess one way to look at it fundamentally would be that, in a sense, Lila is a way of describing all reality, right? The cosmos, everything, the knowable universe, everything. It's all the creative play by a divine absolute, right? Brahman, you'd say. Or in other words, it dances with itself, right? So there's no separateness. It's all just one big Lila. It's all Lila-ing. Everything is just that play, that dance with itself, which we would be a part of, right? And so we would be a part of that, and I guess that's a non-dualistic way of looking at it. I like to think of it more, I guess, in dualist terms. But I like to think of it more as like Lila referring to the dance between God and its devotee, his devotee, her devotee, right? It's a dance or a game or play between the lover and the beloved, teacher, student, like and dislike, or yin and yang even. This reminds me of the story of the Hindu god Hanuman, who, after completing his task for Ram attempts to Ram attempts to bring Hanuman, Ram is God, he tries to bring Hanuman into himself so that Hanuman can merge with the infinite. Which I guess is what seeking enlightenment kind of is, right? You want to merge with the absolute. But so Hanuman struggles against God, and God thinks, "What are you doing, you stupid monkey?" And Hanuman tells his beloved that excuse me, sorry, I had to clear my throat. But so Ram attempts to bring Hanuman into himself and merge him within the universe. But Hanuman struggles, and he says, and so God says, "What are you doing?" And Hanuman tells his beloved that he wishes nothing but to stay separate so that he can continue to worship him. He tells God that he wants to keep living and not merge, so that he can continue to worship him, or to worship it. I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it. There's this one story I've heard of Swami Ramdas, not a Baba Ramdas, formerly Richard Alpert, a drug guru, spiritual phenomenon. Although I love him, but I think I heard him tell this story about Swami Ramdas, who was an old Hindu sadhu of sorts. And one time he got kicked out of his ashram because he was a rebel, causing trouble and doing things they wished him not to do. And so he got kicked out one night, and he was getting bit up by all these mosquitoes. He couldn't sleep, right? The mosquitoes were keeping him awake. And so the story goes that after some time, after like an hour or so or something of resisting, he sits up and he goes into meditation, and he says to himself or to God, thank you, God, for sending these mosquitoes to keep me awake so that I can continue to worship you. Talk about devout, huh? That is, yeah, I think that's an interesting way of looking at things. Here, let me continue. So, to me, it's like the bodhisattva who comes right to the edge of enlightenment, who approaches the infinite but doesn't merge into it, into God. It reminds me of, I forget what the graph is called in like mathematics, where you approach infinity, but then like you can make something approach infinity, but you can't get to infinity. It's almost like how we can get to the speed of light, but we can't go faster than that. Though that might be something completely different. In any case, even though, so in this case, when you're a bodhisattva, I guess, right? When you don't merge into God, you come right up to the edge of enlightenment, and then you come back to bring everyone the way there. Because if you merged with it, then you leave your body, and then you can't help people. So you have to stay within separateness. And it's interesting because it's not exactly to save others, even though that's part of the divine play, and that is part of it. But it's rather to keep playing the game. And I guess help everyone along the way, because if I've heard that roughly speaking, Mahayana versus Theravada Buddhism is sort of like, in one you get yourself enlightened, so that then you can contribute to the, I guess, the like amount of enlightenedness in the universe or something, and then that helps people get there more quickly, right? Like the 100th monkey experiment. But and I forget which one is which, but I think the Mahayana Buddhism is more along the lines of helping others get along the way so that you yourself can get there also. Like getting enlightened through charities almost, I guess. I don't know. That's sort of a rant, but Lila is to keep playing, right? To keep dancing. Keep the play, the show must go on, keep it going. Sometimes you gotta hustle. But I mean, it's almost like once you orgasm, it's kind of done, right? Because once you get there and you get to infinity, you merge with God, that's the journey, game's over, that's it. Cutscene or end scene, But the foreplay is the dance, the worship, the push and pull of looks, of touch, of good grades and bad grades. I don't know, it's the dance of life. I would like to articulate this a little bit more. Excuse me. And drink some water. I would like to articulate this more, but first I want to read a poem by Aldous Huxley, which comes, as far as I know, from his book Island, which I've never read, but from what I understand, it's like his antithesis to Brave New World, where this is more utopian and it's like a cornucopia on how to live the perfect society. And I've heard it's a very, very, very good book with a reasonably good description of an accurate psychedelic experience. But so I'm going to read this poem, or this quote, I guess. He says, "It's dark because you are trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. I was so preposterously serious in those days, such a humorless little prig. Lightly, lightly, it's the best advice ever given to me. When it comes to dying even, nothing ponderous or pretentious or emphatic. No rhetoric or tremolos. No self-conscious persona putting on its celebrated imitation of Christ or Little Nell. And of course, no theology, no metaphysics. Just the fact of dying and the fact of the clear light. So throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly. Lightly, my darling, on tiptoes and no luggage, not even a sponge bag. Completely unencumbered. Aldous Huxley Island. I've got to read that book. That is a beautiful quote. I saw it not too long ago. He says, throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That is wonderful. God to me is Brahman. Or well, everything is God, I guess. Not to be like super spiritual. Like spiritually cliche, but some words. I mean, what do you want me to call it? The infinite, the ineffable, or the Tao, the Brahma. I believe in just Brahma. The Tao, man. It's just the way of things and how things happen and fate. And I don't know how to talk about these things because there's so much stigma around it. But I'm gonna continue. The universe is full of all perfections. It's full of all perfections. It contains everything within itself. The Brahma is full of all perfections. It contains the entirety of the universe within itself. It's not anything, right? The Tao isn't anything, can't be differentiated. I like the image of the Ouroboros, right? The snake sort of eating its own tail. I think that's a powerful symbol. And I think that's a powerful symbol. It's everything and nothing, right? Like the yin yang. I mean, it's the beginning taking into it its end, and it's coming full circle, right? But it also sort of symbolizes like a closed circuit. Which, symbolically speaking, I believe, I might have this completely wrong, please correct me. But like a closed circle, or a circle, or an O, is sort of symbolic of the womb, or a womb, a symbolic womb, right? Not like a physical one, but a symbolic space from which creativity stems, from which novelty comes. But anyways, I want to say that Brahma and God to me, and I know this might piss some people off, but Brahma and God to me seem like the same thing. I mean, I guess you have different ideas. This is what the problem was with having a monotheistic, having one God, is there's different aspects of God and there's different layers of reality, and when you have only one God, you can only attribute everything to that one thing, but there are different forces of nature at work. And to me, it seems like our ancestors were worshipping these gods and goddesses as symbols for forces of nature or patterns of the universe, like cycles or something. The god of anger, or the god of war. Like, that is almost obviously to me what they were worshipping. Not that they were worshipping, that they really thought these beings were up in the sky somewhere. They were embodied personas of an idea, of what would later become an idea after refinement. But Brahma to me is what I feel like the idea of an omniscient God is, right? It's all encompassing. Nothing can be separated from Brahman. Even the lower realms of hell and all of that are within God. I guess unless your God is personified. But to say that whatever that creative force is, to say that it has some purpose in creating the world would mean that it almost seems like it would be doing so in order to attain, through that process of creation, something which it doesn't have. But it has it all. Why would it do anything? So it has no meaning. There can be no purpose of God or Brahman creating the world. The world is merely, or not so mere, it's fantastical. It's terrifying. It's terrifyingly beautiful, spontaneous creation of the existence is the Lila, a dance or a sport of God. It's strange and awesome and awful, and it's definitely full of awe. It's a strange thing, right? Existence, being itself. Like, you ever look in the mirror? And I saw a meme of this, which brought me many laughs. But you ever look in the mirror and look in there and look at your eyes and say, man, I am really up in this body. Like, I'm really there. That's me right there. It's like, you almost can't believe it sometimes. But existence is the Lila, a dance or a sport of God, game. I like the idea of a dance more. Because people are like, what do you mean it's a game? It's play. It's playful. It's like the dance between lover and beloved, guest and cashier, parent, child, teacher, student. I think the idea of Lila has to fundamentally presume a unity between all things. Something binding the entire universe together. Right? Like that Ouroboros or closed circuit, or yin and yang. And all of that encompassed would be Brahma or God, or Tao maybe. I'm not sure if you put Tao in there. I'm not sure exactly where these things separate qualitatively. But I don't know, maybe we'll figure it out. Oh well. That's an interesting idea. I'm gonna look that up. I've got to read more Taoist things. But what image is brought to my head sometimes, the image that's brought to thought sometimes, is the image of Indra's net, right? Where there's an infinite amount of points, and each of which represent a point of consciousness. Each of them, all of the points are interconnected with one another. They're all connected with one another. Sort of like Metatron's cube. If you're familiar with more esoteric, sacred geometries, I forget what the shape is called, but they call it Metatron's cube. In any case, this one, it's this one that manifests, God again, right? Brahma. It's the one that manifests as many to realize its unity through separateness and recognize itself, right? It's one it separates into many only to realize through its separateness that it is all one, right? And that's a sort of dance. And quite literally, it becomes itself, when the body disintegrates and it goes back into the soil that produces the grass that the cow eats, that you later eat. If you eat red meat, or even just the soil of the soil that contains the nutrients for the blueberry bush or the blueberry plant. I think it's a bush that you then eat from. I mean, everything, even plants, trees, everything. But see, we do this, it does this, it plays with itself. It plays with itself, right? But it does this, you do this, not for any reason other than to play or to dance. I mean, it's easy to say, right? But we think that we have reasons for what we do. But if you watch children play, like kids who play for no other reason than to play, it's so interesting. The act is self-sufficient unto itself, right? Like they know full and well that the tide might come in and knock down their sandcastle, but they're there ready to start from scratch again. Kids have to be... No, yeah, by force. They're sort of made to become comfortable with failure because they don't really know anything. They have to figure it out. Not all knowledge is ingrained, or not all ancestral knowledge is accessible to us, right? It's through instincts. It's the unconscious drives that we're given. But see, so when there's so very few things that are as sweet as recognizing. I dropped my phone, but it's all okay. But there's very few things that are as sweet as recognizing God in someone else. I mean, when you have a moment of laughter with someone and you look in each other's eyes to find yet another expression of the divine, those moments are truly sacred when you have them together. It's like Brahma was playing hide and seek and finally found itself, even if only for a moment. It reminds me an awful lot of Shakespeare's quote, "All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts." I mean, have you ever been in a tough spot, and just as you were about to give up, the perfect stranger comes offering you exactly something you've been looking for? Or what you needed, unbeknownst to you beforehand? Or when someone makes, such a timely entrance and exit in your life. It's almost like they came from central casting. You were in trouble or something happened, and the director goes, "That's your cue," to the person who enters left stage, and you do your thing, and then they exit right stage or something. And what I think is interesting is how convinced we are of our own roles as whatever it is, right? Whatever our value or values are, whatever our reference points of identification. But our identifying reference points, talk about method acting, it's just very interesting. It's in those situations, or after a synchronistic event, when something like some coincidence happens, some grand coincidence, sometimes you wonder who the hell is writing this script? What is that cosmic director that guides our unfolding? I mean, God wants to dance with itself, to play, right? And that gives me faith sometimes. Just as bad as things may seem, you wouldn't leave yourself hanging, right? You won't leave yourself hanging. Just that sometimes we have to look for the cosmic signs, so to speak. See the sign, let it open up your eyes. That room for growth, right? That open window that opens when he closes the door. That's how you keep the dance going. Find the opportunity, because if you don't seek change, the change will seek you. If you don't play the role of seeker with God hiding, then God will seek, and though it's a blessing to be found, it might not be pleasant. But see, that's all intellectualizing it. You don't stay in your head and calculate every move. Though that can be fun too, right? With like dancing, like choreographed movements, like that's lots of fun. But as a play, as a dance, you step lightly and adjust yourself as needed to keep the game going with the partner, right? Take cues from your partner. You can choose not to play with the universe, but as Wavy Gravy said, the notorious clown, or famous clown, I guess he's not so notorious. But he said, if you can't laugh at life, it just isn't funny. And that's not to say that war and famine and all these terrible things, that trauma is to be laughed at, or trauma is fun. But you can be in pretty dire straits and look at your situation to realize it's so bad, it's so dreadful and hellish that you couldn't make it up. It's so fucking bad. Sorry for cursing, if any of you are offended by that. But it can be so dag-nab bad. And I might start to become nihilistic and pessimistic and become convinced that the world really is out to get me, We raise our fist at the essence of creation, at the force of creation. But sometimes we've got to count our blessings, and because at least we're alive. It's interesting. I find it interesting that you can get so happy, so high, so full of joy and bliss. But not only can you enter despair and depression and a downward spiral, but you can literally die. That's where that downward spiral goes. You literally die. You're already given to life. What a hilarious predicament that is. It's the cosmic giggle, don't you think? Think about it. You get so high, so happy, so full of joy, so blissful. You get really far out there, and make your life really full of meaning. But not only can you feel terrible, as terrible as you can feel good, you can feel that bad equally and also literally die. But I guess that's the thing, right? Is if you leave your body, if you get so high and high, eventually it becomes so great that you leave your body. So we end up in the same place. It's the same place that we were before we were born. It's the place we return to when we die. Which is so strange. Strange. We take our lives for granted sometimes. Sometimes find ourselves trying to distract from things that we don't want to deal with, or simply to pass time, without remembering that we are, as some people say, all that was, is, and ever will be. We are manifestations of the infinite. We're simply packaged differently. And back to the concept of Lila, one sort of exercise that I like, which I think might help some of us understand the concept a bit better, and grok it, if you will. The way I try to see it is, and I'd love to hear any feedback on this. Again, my email will be in the description, and if you're listening to this on YouTube, please leave a comment, subscribe to whatever the channel is that this is posted on. I believe it's Here Today. But so what I try to do is we've got our conscious awareness, right? So that I try to work with this idea that outside of my experiential awareness, outside of this body, and to a certain extent including the body, right? Like just your sense of awareness, which wherever it's localized for you, because the body is also part of of the patterns of nature, right? Of the cause and effect of the material world that started at the Big Bang or whenever creation started, right? Like all the natural law of cause and effect. Your body is a part of that. It's being carried by the current of Gestalt, the Gestalt current of existence, right? Everything that led up to you and that you were somewhat mediating with your sense of awareness. But in any case, we'll save that for later. And so let's say this body, right? You're in control of how you move your limbs. You're in control of your body. Though we're not always in charge of the body we're inhabiting. But let's say, for argument's sake, that everything outside of my body is one homogeneous field. Outside of my body is nothing but God, Guru, Self, Brahma, Tao, universe, the ineffable, the everything, right, is outside of you, outside of this body. It's all one thing. There's no banana tree as separate from like the soil. There's no separation between say your neighbor, right, your individual neighbor, or his refrigerator or my refrigerator. Right? It's all one thing outside of this body. It's all one happening. So when a peer or a family member makes a comment, it's God speaking to you. When you get caught at that light, it's God speaking to you. When someone slams a door in your face, it's God speaking to you. When you're in a rush and that light turns red, it's the universe communicating with you. And now God is doing this all the time. It's the way of things, the Tao, right? From that place comes the ability to play, to participate in the Lila. I think in a sense, the concept of free will is very intertwined with the concept of Lila, in that you can't choose how the world is going to behave. You can, however, choose your reaction to it, to an extent, right? After some time, those reactions to the world, they become grooves in your mind. They become second nature, almost learned instinctive reactions, right? But we can play with the Dharma all the time. It's a constant communication with us through our environment. Always, always. It's always coming in. It's always playing. It never stops. It never stops. Believe me. So then the play is, how do you take it? When the light turns red, do you accelerate? When someone says something absolutely reprehensible, how do you take it? Do you ignore it? Do you dish something out just as bad? Do you punch them? I don't recommend any violence against anyone. I think we should be able to use our words and, at least settle on a disagreement. But what do? Do you demand they be banned from speaking at your local town hall or online? Well, that's the play. When you're a good sport, you don't pick up your ball and go home just because someone pushed you too hard, right? Sometimes I'll be walking to or fro and I'll overhear something. Two people conversing and I just happen to pick up a few words. Well, that's fodder too, right? That's more of it. How does a given event speak to me? What is being communicated, right? And obviously you mediate between your internal environment, your external environment, right? Your past experiences. And the ego sort of whittles out from the good and the bad to find a reasonable midline. In regards to where I am, where does a given event speak to me? In regards to where I am on my spiritual path, or in simply my own mind? And so, yeah, that's how I like to think of the concept of Lila, of life as a play, as playing, as dancing with God. And you know who reminds me a lot of that, like whose work awakens that notion in me often, is Hafiz. There's a collection of his works called The Gift, and goodness gracious, it is so good. So I recommend that, The Gift by Hafiz, to anyone who's interested. And thank you for joining me. Thanks for coming and listening, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to me ramble on about stuff that might not even matter to you. But that's my shtick. And please email me at heretodayml.com, or follow me on Instagram at It's All Now. I'm gonna try to take more time out to release episodes more consistently for this podcast, and hopefully that will go well. Hopefully, well, see, this is why I want whoever's out there listening, send me an email. I don't need to know it's you, or like DM me on Instagram or something, or comment if you're listening to this on YouTube, because I might put this on YouTube. Definitely comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Please tell me, something. Talk shit to me or something. Give me something to talk about for you out there who's listening, so we can have a discussion, And I'd love to have a discussion if you'll send me a message. So yeah, that's it for today, everybody. I'm Marcos Luna. Thanks for coming to the Just a Thought podcast, and I'll see you next time.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.